"I am tired, Benjamin. I am not your nurse, I am not your mother, and I am not your jailer," she screamed, standing by the front door with a travel bag in her left hand and rage in her eyes. Her right hand pointed like an arrow at the man trembling before her in a dusty wheelchair. Her husband, crippled and broken, pleading, begging her to be more patient, but Amaka didn't listen. Benjamin, the man who once had the world at his feet, now had tears streaming down his face, his palms pressed together in a silent cry for mercy. "Please, Amaka," he choked. "Just give me time. The doctors said maybe, if we can try surgery abroad, maybe." "I'm done," she spat. "I gave you 4 years of my life. 4. What do I have to show for it? No child, no rest, no joy. Just a man who can't walk, can't work, and can't give me the life I deserve. I didn't marry you to suffer, Benjamin. You're cursed." She didn't wait for a reply. With one final glare, she yanked open the gate, rolled her bag onto the dusty street, and disappeared. Just like that. Benjamin sat frozen, tears streaking down his dusty face. Neighbors peeped from behind curtains, but no one came out to help. His arms fell to his lap. His voice broke into a deep cry, raw and full of pain, as he whispered, "She left me to die." 4 years earlier, Benjamin Emeka had everything, at least on paper. He was the only son of Chief Emeka, the oil tycoon, whose name made governors stand up and presidents take calls at midnight. But none of that mattered to Benjamin anymore. After the death of his mother at age 20, the walls of his father's mansion stopped feeling like home. The warm dinners disappeared, the birthday surprises, the hugs, all gone. His father became cold, distant, and silent. Even though Benjamin looked exactly like his late mother, Chief Emeka stopped calling him son. Instead, he focused on Cynthia and Margaret, Benjamin's 2 sisters, who seemed to inherit his attention like a passed-down fortune. It got worse. "Need new shoes? Go ask your sister. Want to speak to your dad? Talk to Cynthia first." Even the smallest thing he needed from his father, he had to go through her sisters to speak to their father on his behalf before he could get it. One day, Benjamin gathered courage to ask, "Daddy, am I really your son?" Chief Emeka didn't even blink. "Don't be stupid," he muttered, brushing past him. That night, Benjamin packed his bags. No one saw him. His car rolled out silently, but before driving through the tall black gates, he looked at the mansion one last time. The marble pillars, the fountains, the 20 security lights. It had been his world for 22 years, but not anymore. Fast forward 3 months later, Benjamin changed his identity to avoid being known. Now calling himself Benjamin Obinna, he lived in a tiny 1-bedroom flat in the outskirts of Lagos. No butlers, no chefs, just the occasional rat in the ceiling. He found a job in a local bank as a teller. His degree in accounting helped. Benjamin worked hard, quiet, sharp, and focused. Within a year, he was promoted to assistant branch manager. That's when he met Amaka. She was smart, beautiful, and full of dreams. A data analyst with bright eyes and a voice like a morning song. They connected fast, laughed hard, and loved each other deeply. When he proposed, she didn't even hesitate. She had waited for it, and she accepted it with joy. They married in a quiet ceremony. Only a few colleagues attended. Benjamin didn't want to talk about family. He told Amaka his parents were dead, and even hired an old man to act as his father for the rites. After 2 months, he told her the man had passed away to avoid her knowing he lied. She believed him and loved him deeply. For 2 years, they tried to have children. Nothing. Doctors said it was stress. He advised them to try IVF or wait and be hopeful, but nothing works. Then came the night that changed everything. 2 years into the marriage, Benjamin was driving home from work when a black SUV cut him off. 3 masked men jumped out. He thought they wanted his car. He gave them his keys. They took his phone, his wallet, even forced him to unlock his bank app and transferred every money he had. But that wasn't enough for them. "You think you're better than us, rich boy?" one of them hissed, pointing a gun to Benjamin's face. Let's see how fast you can run now. They shot him in both thighs and left him bleeding on the roadside. A passerby saw him and called the number saved as My Angel, a marker. She came running. She screamed when she saw him. Blood everywhere. Barely breathing on the roadside. The doctors said he needed surgery, the kind they couldn't afford. Without it, he'd never walk again. With no more for the surgery, they couldn't do it. The nerves in his thighs were gone. He was paralyzed from the hips down. He returned home in a wheelchair after losing everything. At first, Amaka tried. Bathed him, fed him, and cleaned him. She worked 2 jobs to be able to meet up and pay bills. But slowly, her heart grew tired, frustrated, and became resentful. Then came that morning, when she packed her bag, when she screamed at him in front of their house, when she called him cursed and left him crying by the gate. Benjamin sat there long after she was gone. Alone, no one to call his wife anymore, no job, no hope. Meanwhile, back in Ikoyi, Chief Emeka lay in bed, sick and now older. His 2 daughters sat beside him. He looked at them with trembling lips. I made a mistake, he whispered. Cynthia frowned. What mistake, Papa? The DNA test. Years ago, after your mother died, I doubted Benjamin. I took a test. It said he wasn't mine. Margaret gasped. What? But I found out recently the doctor who did the test had a grudge against Benjamin. He lied. Another test proved Benjamin is my son, my only son. The sisters burst into tears. Papa, I must find him, Chief Emeka cried. Please, find your brother before I die. And with that, a nationwide search began. Billboards, radio, security agencies. Private investigators were hired. And finally, a breakthrough came. A former bank colleague remembered Benjamin, the strange, quiet man who worked so hard, until the robbery incident. He gave them the address. When they found Benjamin, he was pale, dirty, and so thin his bones showed through his shirt. But when he was rolled into the Emeka mansion, something happened. As soon as Chief Emeka saw him, he stood from the bed. My son, he whispered. Benjamin, confused, looked up from the wheelchair. Then the old man fell to his knees and cried, I'm sorry. Please, forgive me. Benjamin stared, trembling. Tears fell from his eyes. For a long moment, the grand marble living room stood still, frozen in a silence so thick it could choke. Chief Emeka knelt beside his son's wheelchair, his arms around Benjamin's frail shoulders, crying like a man who had finally seen a ghost he'd been running from for years. Cynthia and Margaret stood nearby, unable to hold back their tears as they watched the brother they had once feared was gone forever. Benjamin didn't say a word. His fingers trembled on the armrest of the wheelchair, and his eyes, those tired, sunken eyes, blinked hard as if trying to believe what he was seeing. Could this really be his father? The man who made him feel like a stranger for most of his life? The man who once walked past him like he was invisible? Benjamin, Chief Emeka said again, his voice cracked. I wronged you. I destroyed you. And I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I'm asking you anyway. Benjamin blinked away tears. Why now? His voice came out hoarse. Why are you doing this now, when I have nothing left? Chief Emeka grabbed his hand and placed it on his chest. Because I finally know the truth. You are my son. My only son. He explained everything, the DNA test after his wife's death, the doubt that crept into his heart, and the doctor who had lied out of jealousy and anger. The second DNA test, the shock, the sickness that followed, and his desperate need to fix things before it was too late. Benjamin closed his eyes, then gave a slow, trembling nod. You hurt me, but you're still my father. The embrace that followed wasn't just a hug, it was the healing of a wound that had bled for 10 years. The very next morning, Chief Emeka's private jet was fueled and ready. Benjamin, accompanied by 2 private nurses and his sisters, was flown to London for an advanced nerve reconstruction surgery. The medical bills? Over 300 million naira was fully paid in advance. For the first time in years, Benjamin felt cared for not by strangers or pity, but by the people who once forgot he existed. Cynthia massaged his arms every evening. Margaret prayed by his bedside every morning. The surgery was intense. The rehabilitation was harder, but Benjamin's willpower was even stronger. 4 months later, a miracle happened. One morning, the physical therapist asked him to try again. Benjamin grabbed the walker beside the bed, slowly pulled himself up, and with trembling legs, he stood again. Cynthia gasped. Margaret shouted with joy. The doctor smiled. Then Benjamin took one step, then another. By the end of the week, he was walking, slow, steady, and determined. 6 months after his return to Nigeria, the news broke. Chief Emeka officially named his son, Benjamin Emeka, as managing director of Emeka Group. The oil industry buzzed. Headlines swirled. The crippled son returns, and he's walking. Emeka's empire has a new king. From dust to diamonds. Benjamin's rise shocks Nigeria. Inside the boardroom, Benjamin now wore navy blue suits tailored perfectly to his healed body. His voice was firm, his decisions bold, and his mind sharper than ever. Investors loved him. Staff respected him. Even rival CEOs tried to schedule lunches. But nothing could prepare him for what happened one Tuesday morning. It was interview day for the new senior data analyst role. Benjamin personally wanted to review the final applicants. The door opened, and the secretary walked in. "Sir, the next applicant is..." She paused, looked behind her, then stepped aside. Benjamin looked up. Standing at the door, holding a handbag, was Amaka. She froze the moment their eyes met. Benjamin's pen dropped. Her lips parted. Her knees buckled. "Benjamin?" she whispered. The room felt cold. Time slowed. A sharp flash of memories ran through Benjamin's mind, of her yelling at him, of the day she walked away and left him crying in a wheelchair, telling him to die, and accused him of being a curse. "Good morning, Miss Amaka," Benjamin said coolly, adjusting his tie like she was a stranger. "Are you here for the data analyst position?" Amaka dropped to her knees. Her voice broke. "Please, Benjamin, forgive me. I was lost. I was angry. I was wrong." Tears rushed down her face. "I didn't know what you were going through. I was just scared. Scared of losing myself in a life I didn't expect." Benjamin leaned back in his chair, hands clasped calmly in front of him. "Please stand, Miss Amaka. This is a professional setting. We're conducting interviews." "But, Benjamin..." "Here at Emeka Group," he interrupted, "we do not mix personal pain with business decisions. If you're qualified, you'll get the role. If not, I'm afraid there are others who may be." He clicked his pen. "Shall we begin?" Amaka was stunned, but she wiped her face, sat down, and answered every question with quiet humility. 2 days later, she received an offer letter. She had been chosen, fairly and professionally. Still, she cried herself to sleep that night, not for the job she got, but for the love she had thrown away. Because Benjamin wasn't the man she left, he was something greater now. And her place in his life? It was gone. 1 year passed. Benjamin found love again. Her name was Sandra, a graceful software engineer working with Emeka Tech, a smart, calm, and deeply kind woman. She had heard whispers of Benjamin's past, but saw only the man he had become. They fell in love slowly but beautifully. When Benjamin told her about his former marriage and his time in a wheelchair, she only smiled and said, "You're not defined by your past. You're defined by how you overcame it." Cynthia and Margaret found love, too, both with longtime friends who had supported them quietly through their darkest days. Chief Emeka's dream came true. His 3 children married on the same day in a wedding that shut down Lagos. Presidents from 4 African countries attended. Billionaires flew in on jets. The nation watched on TV. It was called the Wedding of the Year. And Amaka? She watched from her apartment's TV, alone. She had tried everything. Emails, letters, texts, even a voicemail begging to be his second wife. But Benjamin never replied, not out of anger but out of peace. He had moved on, and this time nothing would break him. The air inside Emeka Group's headquarters always felt sharp, glass walls, polished marble floors, and the constant hum of productivity. But lately, something else buzzed through the halls, Amaka's presence. Everyone had seen the viral headline months ago, "Billionaire's ex, wife returns, as his employee." Though the company made no comment, the gossip never stopped. Some whispered behind. Others stared when she passed the cafeteria. But Amaka kept her head down, showing up early, working late, determined to be noticed for her skills, not her past. Still, every day she walked through those massive doors, her heart pounded. Not from fear, from hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, Benjamin would see her again. Not as the woman who left him crippled and crying, but as someone who had changed. But Benjamin? He was ice. Every meeting was formal. Every conversation short. He never looked too long. Never smiled. And not once, not even by accident, did he mention her name. He had forgiven her, but he had locked the door she once walked out of. One rainy Thursday, the company hosted a charity drive for disabled children. Benjamin was the guest speaker. Amaka sat near the back, her heart aching as she watched him step on stage, strong, composed, and confident. The man she once abandoned, now standing tall before hundreds, sharing a story of survival and grace without bitterness. "I once thought being broken meant the end," Benjamin said, his voice steady, "but sometimes being broken is how light enters. That pain taught me who I really am." The audience clapped. Amaka blinked back tears. She had known his pain. She had caused part of it. Now he was turning it into power. Later that night, Amaka returned home to a quiet apartment. No one waiting, no one calling. She stared at the meal she cooked and couldn't eat, then reached for her journal. "Today, I watched the man I left become everything I once dreamed of. I'm proud of him. But the guilt doesn't go away. Not because he didn't take me back, but because he had to heal without me. And I'm the reason he needed healing in the first place." She paused, then wrote, "I will never ask him for love again. But maybe I can at least be someone he respects." She wiped her eyes and closed the book. Meanwhile, across town, Benjamin sat in his office with Sandra. She had brought him late-night dinner suya, and pepper soup and laughed as he winced at the heat. "Still too spicy?" she teased. He chuckled. "Still worth it." As they ate, he glanced at his phone. A company-wide report showed Amaka's team had exceeded their data goals. He smiled faintly. "She's working hard," Sandra said softly. Benjamin nodded. "She's always had potential," then looked away. That was all. Just a quiet acknowledgement. Not love. Not hate. Just closure. Amaka sat alone at her desk late that evening, long after the others had gone home. The office lights above her buzzed quietly, casting soft shadows across the room. On her screen, a report blinked. Saved. But she hadn't touched her keyboard in nearly 10 minutes. Her eyes had drifted to the framed photo beside her monitor, a younger version of herself and Benjamin, both smiling, both naive, back when love had felt like a promise carved in stone. She thought back to the early days. How he used to boil hot water for her baths before work. How he left handwritten notes beside her pillow. How he cried softly the first time she said, "I love you." And then she remembered the day she told him she was leaving. His tears, his hands shaking on the wheelchair, the look in his eyes when she turned away without looking back. The guilt still followed her like a shadow. For months now, she had tried to show change, not through apologies, but through consistency. She took on extra projects, led a volunteer initiative, and helped junior staff without being asked. Even when Benjamin never acknowledged her directly, she kept at it. But deep inside, she had held on to one small hope, that maybe, somehow, he'd see her again, not just as an employee, but as someone worthy of love. Until today. Earlier in the morning, Benjamin and Sandra had walked into the building together, laughing like old friends. The glow between them was impossible to miss. They looked happy. And that was the moment it hit Amaka like cold water. He has truly moved on. Not politely, not out of revenge, but honestly, he had found peace in someone else. And she was no longer part of his story. Not as a wife, not as a friend, only as a colleague. Now, sitting under the glow of her desk lamp, Amaka reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. Inside it was a letter she had written weeks ago, a final apology, one she planned to give him when the time felt right. But the time would never feel right, because it was no longer about timing. It was about letting go. She stood, walked quietly to his office door, and slid the envelope beneath it. Then, with a deep breath, she turned away, not to chase him again, but to free herself. Inside his office, Benjamin didn't notice the envelope until the next morning. He picked it up, opened it, and read every word slowly. It wasn't a request, it wasn't a plea, just a quiet, sincere apology. He stared at the letter for a while, then folded it neatly and placed it in his drawer. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He simply whispered, "Thank you." And with that, something unspoken between them finally came to rest. The Emeka mansion buzzed with laughter and life. It had been a full year since Benjamin's wedding to Sandra, and the house once filled with tension and coldness now overflowed with warmth. Chief Emeka, healthier than he had been in years, sat on the front balcony surrounded by grandchildren's toys, sipping water and smiling at nothing in particular. Benjamin stood at the edge of the lawn, arms folded, watching Sandra as she helped organize a coding camp for young girls hosted by one of their tech subsidiaries. The sight of her, confident, gentle, and full of purpose, still made his chest tighten in awe. He had built his life back from dust. He had felt love, then loss. Now, love again. But this time, the foundation was different, stronger. Not made from escape or loneliness, but from truth. At the office, things had settled into a steady rhythm. Amaka still worked at Emeka Group. She had become one of the company's most trusted analysts. Though she kept to herself, her results spoke loudly. She earned every promotion, every accolade. But something had shifted inside her too. She no longer stared at Benjamin's office door with longing. She no longer saved his photos or wrote in her journal about second chances. She had accepted the truth. What they had was over, and it was no longer something to be revived, but something to be honored and let go. She had grown in her own way. One evening, she bumped into Sandra in the elevator. For a moment, both women stood in silence, polite, guarded. Then Sandra broke it with a soft smile. "I've read your reports. You're brilliant." Amaka blinked, then nodded with a faint smile. "Thank you. I know what happened before," Sandra continued, "and I know it's none of my business. But whatever pain you both went through, it helped shape the man I love today. So, thank you." Amaka felt something heavy lift from her chest. "He's lucky to have you," she whispered. "And I mean that." They parted ways with quiet grace, and for the first time, Amaka didn't cry afterward. She simply smiled to herself, knowing she had finally released what she'd been holding for years. 3 months later, the company celebrated its 40th anniversary. There was a gala at Eco Hotel, lights, cameras, presidents, and business moguls. Benjamin gave a speech that left the audience in tears, reflecting on legacy, forgiveness, and how sometimes life rewrites stories we thought were finished. After the event, as guests slowly made their way out, Amaka approached Benjamin by the water fountain near the lobby. "Congratulations," she said gently. Benjamin looked at her with calm eyes. "Thank you, Amaka." There was a pause. "I'm leaving," she added. Benjamin raised an eyebrow. "Leaving Emeka Group?" "Yes. I got an offer, a broad research analyst role in Canada. I think it's time I built something new, far away." He nodded slowly. "I think that's a good idea." She smiled. "You changed my life, Benjamin, in more ways than I can count. Not just by loving me, but by surviving me. By giving me a big opportunity at Emeka Group despite our past. Thank you." Benjamin extended his hand, and she took it. "Be well, Amaka," he said softly. "You too." They held the moment just a second longer. Then she turned and walked away, this time, not out of pain or regret, but with peace in her step. As she boarded her flight 2 weeks later, Amaka looked out the window and whispered to herself, "I may have lost him, but I found myself." Meanwhile, Benjamin stood at his office window, watching the city lights twinkle far below. Sandra walked in, holding a cup of coffee. "Thinking again?" she teased. He smiled and turned to her. "No, just grateful." He took the cup, pulled her close, and kissed her forehead. After all the storms, all the heartbreak, and all the silence, the story had come full circle. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.